Rumors continue to circulate around Dodge returning to NASCAR in 2026 in the Craftsman Truck Series, and it sounds like Homestead will likely host a championship race in 2026. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got to NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just show them straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Spencer Boyd's 2025 Amthor scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. Scheme's okay in my opinion. I think that they've done a solid job on their schemes. This one's okay. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Martinsville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Christopher Bell's 2025 DeWalt Spring scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. Honestly, one of the better DeWalt schemes I've seen so far in 2025. I like the spring touch. It looks really solid, and it's going to be a good looking car to see on the track. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Carson Quaffle's 2025 Jamie McMurray throwback that we'll see at Darlington. This is throwing back to Jamie McMurray's 2010 scheme that he ran at Chip Ganassi Racing. This looks phenomenal. Junior Motorsports absolutely knocked this one out of the park. It's one of the best throwbacks we've seen so far throughout 2025. They nailed it. They did a great job. Absolutely looking forward to see on the racetrack when we get to Darlington next week. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Michael McDowell's 2025 Rockingham Speedway scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. I think this scheme looks really good, and it's really good promotion for the Rockingham race that's going to be taking place at the end of next month. It looks really awesome, looks fantastic, and it's been great to see on the racetrack this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is AJ Allmendinger's 2025 Black's Tire scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. Scheme's okay. We've seen this before. We've seen it with Christian Atkins. We're going to see it at Darlington next week. It looks all right. It's not the best scheme I've seen, though, but it does look okay. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Parker Retzlaff and Brendan Poole's 2025 Prime Bite schemes that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. They've got an alternate look for Parker Retzlaff. I think it looks okay. I like Brendan Poole's, though. His looks really good. I like that more than Parker Retzlaff's, but I think both do look pretty good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ross Chastain's 2025 Choice Privileges scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. I think Trackhouse nailed this one. It looks fantastic. They got an alternate look. They've got a black and white look to the car. It looks really awesome. And it's going to be pretty good to see on the track at Martinsville. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chris Buescher's 2025 Old El Paso scheme that we'll see this weekend at Martinsville. I love the colors on this car. It's colorful. It's one of my favorite RFK schemes I've seen so far in the early portion of this year. They did a great job, and it's going to be good to see out on the track. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jerry Clements' 2025 Harry Gant throwback scheme that we'll see at Darlington. This is throwing back to Harry Gant's 1985 scheme. They nailed this one. Jeremy Clements' team did a fantastic job on it. It's got the look. It's got the Skull Bandit look to it, which is something that they need to be when you're going to be doing a throwback. It looks very fantastic. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Darlington. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Elliott's 2025 Ken Schrader throwback scheme that we'll see at Darlington. Unlike the Jeremy Clements one, this is probably the worst throwback I have seen since they started doing the throwback weekend. This looks nothing like Ken Schrader's 1994 car. They have a yellow number, which wasn't a yellow number. There was a black number on Ken Schrader's car in 94. The colors are mismatched. The sponsorship placement's really out of whack. And to me, it just doesn't look good. It looks very wacky, doesn't look good, and it's one of the worst throwbacks we've seen so far that have been revealed for this year. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ty Dillon's 2025 Mark III scheme that we'll see at Martinsville. Scheme looks pretty nice in my opinion. I think the colors work very perfectly on this one. We saw this with Kyle Busch. It's definitely the one that Kyle Busch had last year, but I think this one does look all right. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Denny Hamlin's 2025 Carl Edwards throwback that we're going to see at Darlington. This is throwing back to Carl Edwards' 2005 Office Depot car. This looks amazing. Unlike the Chase Elliott one, this looks really good. They nailed this one. It's one of my favorite Denny Hamlin ones I've seen in recent years. They did a great job. They're honoring Carl Edwards, who, of course, drove for Joe Gibbs Racing for a couple years. It looks fantastic. It looks amazing. And I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack when we get to Darlington for the throwback race. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the North Wilkesboro Truck Race. As they have a title sponsor for the event, it's going to be called the Window World 250. Window World's had association with a couple races in the truck series over the course of the last couple years. This is going to be the first time they're sponsoring the truck race at North Wilkesboro, however. I think the logo of it looks really nice, and it's pretty awesome to see that Window World is going to be sponsoring the truck series race at North Wilkesboro. Glad to see they'll be working with the truck race when we do get to North Wilkesboro in a couple weeks or a couple months from now. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mobil 1. As it was announced early this morning, the Mobil 1 will be sponsoring TRICON Garage for 7 Truck Series races in 2025. They're going to sponsor Corey Heim for 4 races this year. The first Martinsville race, I believe I saw in North Wilkesboro, is going to be one of the races that they are going to sponsor him as well. And they're also going to sponsor Brent Cruz for 3 races in 2025. Mobil 1's got big association with Toyota, and they've got the Pegasus car coming out as well. These cars and trucks look really incredible. It's nice that Mobil 1's going to be part of the Corey Heim world. I do like the Safe Light truck, though it's not as strong as last year's scheme. But I think bringing Mobil 1 into the fold for Corey Heim is a really big deal. I think they both look really nice. They look really great. And again, pretty excited to see that Mobil 1 is going to be stepping up to the plate, and they are going to be sponsoring Corey Heim and Brent Cruz with their Toyota affiliation. It makes sense for them to sponsor him, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Lucas Oil. As it was announced this morning that Lucas Oil will sponsor Kyle Busch in 2025 for 3 races. His first race will be this weekend at Martinsville, then his next race will be at Mexico City, and then the final race will be at the Bristol Night Race. Lucas Oil has been associated with Kyle Busch for the last 2 years, going back to 2023. They're also part of the big announcement that we're going to talk about here in just a short little bit. Of course, they were the first sponsor that Kyle Busch had when he won at Auto Club Speedway for the organization in 2023, and every time Kyle Busch has had Lucas Oil on his car, that car has had a lot of success. And while I'm not expecting too much when we get to Martinsville, we all remember how good he was at COTA. I think he could have a chance and opportunity to win when we do get the Circuit of the Americas in a couple, not Circuit of the Americas, but Mexico City. I think he's going to have a great chance and opportunity to get it done there. Nonetheless, great opportunity, and it's pretty exciting to see Lucas Oil's back. The car is going to be looking very similar to what they had last year, and I think it's a nice looking car they'll have for Kyle Busch in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Matthew Gould. As it was announced on Monday evening that Matthew Gould will drive the 44 truck for Nice Motorsports this weekend at Martinsville. This will be the first of multiple starts he will have scheduled with this organization in 2025. Matthew Gould made a few starts in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2024 for Nice Motorsports and actually had some decent runs in the trucks, but he was never super competitive. Now, originally he was going to drive the number 41 truck for the team, but when the funding fell for Christian Rose, they moved a lot of the drivers part of the 41 truck over to the 44 for this season. Matthew Gould also is son of Phil Gould, who is a crew chief for Caden Honeycutt this year. I'm not expecting Matthew Gould to be a major factor like Ross Chastain was at Homestead-Miami Speedway, but I also don't think that Nice Motorsports is the best organization out there currently at the moment. Realistically, this weekend, the goal should be around the top 15, top 20. That should be the goal, hopefully, for them. I think that's the capabilities. Plus, it feels not as strong this year compared to prior seasons. But I do think that Matthew Gould could be up for a very solid performance. We'll see if the pace of speed can be there as Matthew Gould looks to run really strong or really well with Nice Motorsports this weekend at Martinsville. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brad Perez. As it was announced yesterday that Brad Perez will drive the 45 for Alpha Prime Racing this weekend at Martinsville. This is going to be the first time in Brad Perez's NASCAR history that he's running back-to-back races. He ran last week at Homestead-Miami Speedway and actually, I believe, finished inside the top 30 in the event, but wasn't up front like some of the other races that he has ran in the past. This is really good experience for Brad. Brad has worked really hard in this industry. He's done a lot of things from being a tire carrier, tire changer, to being a spotter for some people, especially in IMSA, but now he's going to get the chance and opportunity to be with Alpha Prime. I believe it's going to be the 3rd or 4th of his 4 original scheduled starts he has behind the wheel. It's unknown at this time how many more races Brad is going to run with this team in 2025. Realistically, I don't think Brad is going to be a major factor for the win, but I think top 25 should be the goal for this weekend. It'd be a really good goal. There are a couple cars that are going home. The 45 car should be in a decent enough position to make it in on owner's points. That'd be really cool if he could get in on owner's points this weekend, but I think that Brad could definitely be in for a pretty good run this weekend at Martinsville. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Patrick Staropoli. As it was announced yesterday that Patrick Staropoli will be driving an 84 truck for Cook Racing Technologies in select races throughout the 2025 season. His first start will be this weekend at Martinsville on Friday night. We've talked a lot about Patrick Staropoli on the channel over the course of the last couple weeks. He made his return to ARCA back at Phoenix a couple weeks ago, actually had a really solid pace and speed, and finished inside of the top 10. He also is going to be running the number 24 for Sam Hunt Racing in 2 races this year, that including this weekend at Martinsville. Now, a lot of people really don't know the story of Patrick Staropoli. He, of course, is a doctor, but Patrick Staropoli was also a driver who was part of Michael Waltrip Racing's development program back around 2013 to 2014. The same development program that helped Michael McDowell over the years and also helped out Brett Moffitt as well. Had Patrick still been in that program and Michael Waltrip Racing was still around, there's a chance and possibility that Patrick Staropoli could have been a Cup Series driver for Michael Waltrip Racing in the coming years if, of course, they were still around. This is a great opportunity. We don't know exactly how many races he's going to be running with Cooking. He's going to be running, of course, with them in ARCA East as well in the number 17 Toyota, so they're switching from Chevy to Toyota, I believe, this season. I would like to see Patrick do really, really well. It's a great opportunity for him, and I think that Patrick could be in for a strong run, though they have to make the field. Actually, everyone's making the field. There's only 35 trucks. But I think that Patrick Staropoli could run really well. We'll see what he does this weekend with them at Martinsville. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Vargas. As it was announced earlier this afternoon that Ryan Vargas has officially announced his plans for 2025. He'll be joining the Canada Series full-time this year, driving number 28 car for DJ Kennington Racing, also known as DJK Racing. Ryan Vargas, over the course of the last couple years, has made starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, in Truck Series. He also ran, of course, full-time for 3F Racing in the NASCAR Euro Series last year, and actually picked up a few podium finishes in select events last year. Ryan Vargas now is coming back over to the North American continent and racing full-time in the Canada Series. I really love what Ryan Vargas is doing here and what he's representing. He's doing a lot of different series. He's going out and doing a lot of different things. He still has involvement as a spotter for multiple teams. And now he's going to have the chance and opportunity to run with a really strong organization. When you think of DJ Kennington is someone who's had a lot of success in the NASCAR Canada Series, also tried to make a go in the NASCAR Cup Series with the Gaunt Brothers team around 2017 to 2018. Unfortunately, did not go as well in his time coming back to NASCAR, but I think that Ryan Vargas could be in for a lot of success. I think Ryan Vargas is a very underrated driver. I remember when he drove full-time for JD Motorsports back in 2020, and he had a lot of really good runs with that team, had some top 15, top 20 performances when Case Callenbach was a crew chief for him. So I could see Ryan Vargas, depending on who he has, being very, very competitive. And I think getting this experience could help him long-term come back and race in NASCAR. NASCAR is in the U.S. So I'm excited to see what Ryan Vargas can do. This is a fantastic and really great opportunity for him, and we'll get to see the chance and opportunity. Hopefully he can do really well in the Canada Series in 2025. Obviously, there's some really good drivers like Kevin LaCroix. You think about other drivers in the series like the Lapsevich brothers, Caden and Traden, are going to both probably be in the series this year. But I'm glad to see Ryan Vargas will be racing full-time in the NASCAR Canada Series in 2025. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Martinsville. Bob Pockrass this morning reported in regards to the option tires. And he says that they will be using the same tire that they used in November, the softer compound that was used in the November race. He also did confirm that there will be no more option tires, more than likely any more races, including the short tracks, for the remainder of 2025. Now, we talked about this, but obviously they did run a softer tire in the fall race at Martinsville, and I think it was one of the best races we have probably seen in the next-gen era on short tracks. It was very, very entertaining. I know we all kind of talk about what happened in manipulation with William Byron and Chevrolet and the stuff that happened to Christopher Bell, but unfortunately overshadowed what actually was one of the better short track races we've seen, and probably the most normal Martinsville race we have seen in recent years. It was a fun event. Ryan Blaney charged up there, and we saw a lot more passes than normal at a short track in the next-gen car. I really will say this, and I think Martinsville probably could have a better race. There's also talk there may be a rain tire as well with the weather not looking as good for the weekend. But let's talk about the other thing, the option tire. It sounds like they're not going to be using the option tire anymore in 2025. I think that not having it in the playoffs, I think is perfectly fine. I do think having an option tire, don't make it too OP, but having an option tire that can wear a little bit quicker than even a softer tire, I think it makes the race compelling and interesting. I know some people say that it's a gimmick, but I don't really consider it fully a gimmick, to be honest with you. I think having an option tire available for people to use, you have to kind of use that strategy, and you kind of have to plan it out. Again, there were some issues with it being OP. There's no denying it on that front, but I do think that there was a lot of positives that came out with using the option tire this year and last year as well, because we probably are going to have the softer compound at Phoenix. I know they did a test recently after the Phoenix race had concluded. It sounded like they're very likely going to run that option tire as a normal tire when we go to the championship race. But overall, I think that it's disappointing to see they're not going to have an option tire anymore for the year, but I'm not surprised to see them not doing any more option tire kind of stuff for 2025 anymore. It's disappointing, but it's not that shocking, to be honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Thermal Club TV ratings from this past weekend. Now, obviously, IndyCar made its return after a 3-week break from St. Pete, and they raced at the Thermal Club. And there's been a lot of questions on how the ratings were going to be for the event. Well, unfortunately, the Thermal Club TV ratings have come in, and they are very, very abysmal and really, really atrocious. According to Adam Stern, Fox got 704,000 viewers for Sunday's race. That is down from 788,000 on NBC. Now, keep this in mind. NASCAR was on FS1. This race was on main Fox. That is a near 50% drop in viewership from the St. Petersburg Grand Prix 3 weeks ago, which had 1.45 million. This is a 50% drop. The biggest drop I think I've seen for an event in IndyCar from the first race to the second race of the season. That is absolutely atrocious. Now, there's a lot of things that need to be brought up. Number one, racing at the same time as NASCAR is racing. I don't know who at Fox and IndyCar made the decision to do that, but that was an awful and terrible, terrible decision. Why would you go up against NASCAR, the biggest sport? Because you look at the ratings, we'll talk about the Homestead ratings here in just a bit when it comes to the viewership, but that's one thing that hurt it. Also, it doesn't help that they had a power outage throughout the event, and they lost power out there. So that probably dropped around 50 to 60,000. That's one of the reasons I think it also dropped as well. But this is an abysmal no for IndyCar, and it's really concerning. Also, I think one reason people didn't tune in is because, one, you had NASCAR going on, but number two, people don't care for the Thermal Club. And I think it's very clear as day, while there's speculation they may be coming back next year, I personally think they shouldn't be going back to Thermal Club and probably give that race to Michigan or Kansas, because I think Kansas or Michigan should be getting IndyCar date at this point, or, going back to Texas Motor Speedway. Because I know they want to fill up the early portion of the schedule, but I think these ratings are atrocious, they're abysmal, and they're absolutely terrible and not a good look for IndyCar. A terrible day for IndyCar overall after a good ending to the race, but personally, it's just a bad look for IndyCar. They're having issues once again with the ratings, to be honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Yuki Tsunoda. As it was reported by ESPN and a Dutch reporter as well, that it sounds like Yuki Tsunoda is expected to swap seats with Liam Lawson at the upcoming Formula One race next weekend at the Japanese Grand Prix. It sounds like Yuki Tsunoda is going to be taking over Liam Lawson's ride for the upcoming Japanese Grand Prix, while Liam Lawson will be going to Racing Bulls for the remainder of 2025. Despite the fact there were only 2 races in the season, we've got a driver change already happening for Red Bull. This is not a good look for Red Bull, and it's kind of crazy that Liam Lawson is already expected, and is expected to be announced sometime later. Probably by the time you're watching this video, it's probably already been announced at this point. Look, I understand that Yuki Tsunoda should be going to Red Bull, and I think it's the right decision to put him behind the wheel of the Red Bull. But one of the issues I have is the fact that Liam Lawson only got 2 races to get a chance and opportunity to race with the top team. If he had 12 or 15 races, I think this decision would have made a lot of sense to me. But we're only 2 races into the Formula One season, and you're telling me that you're already switching him up? Red Bull has already got a bad culture on its own. There's a lot of unknowns. They've lost a lot of big-name people in recent years. Jonathan Wheatley's gone, and they've lost other big people who are going over, like Adrian Newey. He's gone to Aston Martin for 2025 and beyond. They've lost a lot of big-name people. And for Yuki, he is going to have a lot of pressure on himself, because now he has to worry about, am I going to keep the seat or am I going to lose this ride? Which he shouldn't have that pressure. And that's on Red Bull. The Red Bull car just right now isn't that good. So I really feel bad for Liam Lawson. Did Liam Lawson do great in the car? No. But he's a rookie. It's been 2 races. And if you didn't think that Liam Lawson was capable of driving that car, you should have given the ride immediately to Yuki Tsunoda. You shouldn't have started with Liam Lawson and then kicked him out 2 races later and then put the other driver behind the wheel. I just don't understand what decision-making sometimes goes on over there at Red Bull. They lost Sergio Perez in recent years. They've lost Daniel Ricciardo. And if they think that someone is going to go up against Max Verstappen, who is still one of the most talented drivers in Formula 1 and maybe arguably the best talent we have in F1 right now, you've got another thing coming. So to me, this is a really bad look for Red Bull to make this change already. I feel terrible for Liam Lawson because I don't think he deserves this treatment. And I feel bad for Yuki because he's probably going to get the same treatment down the road. And personally, I'm not a fan of a driver getting this kind of treatment, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Richard Childress. Now, on the most recent Actions Detrimental with Denny Hamlin, during the middle portion to the end portion of the podcast, there was a very interesting conversation that came up around Denny Hamlin and Richard Childress. And during this part, basically it kind of goes like this. And shout out to Jonathan Howard putting out the quotes from this as well. There was a police escort that was escorting multiple Joe Gibbs Racing members and Denny Hamlin and his team out of the racetrack. Meanwhile, you have Richard Childress, who's trying to come out of the racetrack as well, and basically is right behind him. But basically someone, I believe, from the Joe Gibbs Racing team had to stop. Then Richard Childress tries to get into the middle of the line and the police escort. A Joe Gibbs Racing employee in a Joe Gibbs Racing car goes up to Richard's car and basically says, "Hey, what are you doing? You're not supposed to be in this police escort." Well, Richard Childress, in something like a Days of Thunder move, he basically tried to force his way into a police escort and destroy the side of one of the Joe Gibbs Racing cars. And there was video that surfaced and there was photos that surfaced from that incident as well. When you take a look at this incident here, there is a lot of damage on the right side of the car. Keep in mind, this is most likely a rental car that the team is using. This probably isn't a personal car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This is most likely a rental car. Now, obviously, I saw a lot of people laughing at the situation, and it's kind of crazy to see Richard Childress do this, but I'm also not surprised or shocked to see Richard Childress do this kind of stuff. That being said, this is a really, really bad look for Richard Childress. And I guess some people are going to think this is funny, but to me, this is not a really, really good look for Richard. Because to me, this is just a bad look because, number one, you're getting in the middle of a police escort, which you should not be doing. If you're not part of a police escort, and if you want to go so badly, you could have just personally gone into another police escort and gone with your team. Imagine if Joe Gibbs Racing team would have done that to Richard Childress. Everyone would have basically been going after Richard in this situation. I think that people that drive erratically and drive dangerous on the roads just are really, really not doing good things for themselves. And dangerous driving is something that I am not a big fan of. We've seen a lot of this stuff where a lot of accidents take place. And what if someone got seriously hurt in this situation? I think it's very likely that something like that could have happened. Well, no one luckily got hurt, and I think we all can laugh and joke about it. It still is a really bad look. Now, interestingly enough, I'd have to think Richard is probably going to respond in the way he usually responds because Richard obviously has a way he talks about things in response to situations. We've seen it many times. To me, I just don't think it's the best look for him, and it's really just not something I would have done if I was in Richard's situation. I know he wanted to go, so if you're college, you probably want to get out of RCR at this point with the way things are going over there, but to me, not the best look for Richard, and I wouldn't have done that if I was in Richard's shoes. But then again, I am not in Richard Childress' shoes. I'm not Richard, and I'm not the one making decisions for him, but it wasn't the best look for Richard, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Homestead viewership and TV ratings from this past weekend. As it was reported by Adam Stern that the Homestead NASCAR Cup Series race on FS scored 2.464 million viewers for the event. That is 3% up from the Homestead race in 2024. Keep that in mind, the race is at the end of the year in October when the NFL was going on at that time. Well, this was the 6th race of the year, and it's not very comparable to last year's 6th race of the year because that was at Circuit Americas and that race was on Main Fox. This race, of course, was on FS1. 2.464 million viewers, well, that's a drop from the prior race in Las Vegas, which I believe had over 3 million viewers for the event. Still having almost 2.5 million people in, while number one, you've got March Madness going on, and you've also got other big events going on, like the IndyCar race happening at the same time. That is still a very solid viewership number. I think a lot of people who did tune into this race and saw a pretty fun and enjoyable race itself, and it was overall a pretty good race, in my honest opinion. We've seen the ratings, we've seen people really excited about it, because generally the next-gen car puts on a really good show. And I think if had this race been on main Fox, like I think it should have been from the get-go, I think this race would have had over 3 million viewers. It is a very popular track. A lot of people really like this race, and I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. And still to see that 2.46 million people decided to tune into it is still very, very good. Now, in regards to like the Xfinity broadcast and Xfinity ratings, 1.16 million people tuned in the Xfinity race. I believe that is up from last year's race about 9 or 10%, which of course I believe was on FS1. So that's a really good increase from the 6th race of 2024, which I believe is at Circuit Americas. And usually road course races don't do as well in the ratings department. And for the Truck Series, which is on main Fox, it got 906,000. Which actually is the best TV ratings to look for trucks. Trucks, in my opinion, probably had the biggest win of the weekend, considering the fact that they were the 3rd best of the weekend. But also the other big thing to kind of look at as well is the fact that basically they were on Fox. They've been having a lot of bad luck when it comes to their TV ratings, and they've been struggling to keep people very, very interested because, one, the broadcasts haven't been great, which I think for the truck broadcast, it actually wasn't that bad on Fox. And for it being a Friday night event, that is still pretty good, all things considered. Overall, the ratings do look really, really good for the weekend. I hope that trend can continue because we shouldn't be expecting like 4 or 5 million people to tune into a cable race because cable races generally don't do that well. We also saw a pretty popular guy in Kyle Larson go to victory lane. I still think the ratings are solid and pretty good, all things considered. Yes, it could have been better, but I do think the ratings for this weekend at Homestead were pretty good overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Nashville Fairgrounds. Now, over the last year or so, there really haven't been a lot of updates, and there has been kind of a little bit of a quiet conversation going around in regards to the Nashville Fairgrounds. We haven't really had any major progress updates, and we really haven't been paying attention to what has been going on over there. Well, that was until earlier this week. It was reported by Adam Stern, which comes from an article from Axios to surface on March the 7th, that we've got a pretty big update in regards to the future of this track. According to Adam Stern, opponents say they are gearing up to pitch a plan that will prohibit racing at the Nashville Fairgrounds. They apparently are looking to do something in regards to the soccer stadium that involves John Ingram, who is basically against the racetrack, who owns the Nashville soccer stadium, and he basically stopped a house plan to basically prohibit racing that's been there since 1904. Now, I believe also John Ingram, who is, of course, the president of the soccer stadium, is also very much in support of this geodis park, which they're trying to create, which would basically get rid of the Nashville Fairgrounds. These individuals that are around the soccer stadium, they want to completely remove the Nashville Fairgrounds off the planet and take it down completely so they can use it for housing complex, aka real estate booming economy and booming real estate economics. Now, I'm going to say something very, very quickly to people that are from the Nashville area or not from the Nashville area. If you move next to a racetrack, that is on you. The Nashville Fairgrounds has been there since 1904. It has been there for 121 years. If you move next to a racetrack and you complain about the sound, that is your fault. How do you not do your research for moving next to a track? If you don't like the sound of the race cars, then why did you move to a racetrack? Why did you move to an area that didn't have a racetrack around? That'd be like going to an airport and complaining about the plane noise. That's absolute nonsense. Or going to a farm and you don't like hearing cows and basically complaining about it and getting a farm destroyed. I just hate when people are like this. And what frustrates me about this whole thing is that I don't believe that taxpayers from Nashville are going to have to pay any money for the project. They've even tested mufflers, which it sounds like if they go to the fairgrounds, they're going to have mufflers. The fairgrounds is going to provide a lot more value than a soccer stadium that's only been there for a couple years. And guess what? The soccer stadium is still going to be very, very loud and probably even louder than the racetrack itself. Yes, the racetrack will be loud, but if they've got mufflers, guess what's going to be louder? The soccer stadium. So when I see stuff like this and I see people trying to destroy something that's been around for 120 years, I get really, really frustrated. We need racing in this country. We don't really need soccer stadiums, if I'm going to be honest. I think racing should be more important than soccer stadiums. So I really get frustrated when I hear stuff like this, and it's really mind-boggling to me that they're trying to destroy something that has been there for a very, very long time. The racetrack provides a lot of value. I get there's a lot of updates that need to be done to the racetrack. But you've got people like Darrell Waltrip and Chase Elliott, and people are in support of it. It will be booming. You're going to have to pay a lot of money for the soccer stadium because you're going to have to pay taxpayer money. You're not going to have to pay any money for the Nashville Fairgrounds. Taxpayers are not going to have to pay any money for that. So when I see stuff like this and I see people trying to destroy something that is very important to the city, I get frustrated because it's going to provide a lot more value than some of the other stuff that's coming out, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. As last night, Kyle Busch made his official big announcement that he was going to be announcing on Monday. So a couple of nights ago on Sunday night, Kyle Busch put out a little bit of a teaser tweet or an X post basically saying 1851. Those two numbers are very iconic to Kyle Busch. The 18 synonymous to when he drove for Joe Gibbs Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series and Xfinity Series from 2008 up until the end of 2022 when he left in 2023 to go over to Richard Childress Racing. Then the number 51, of course, is synonymous with his Truck Series program, and I believe it's the most successful number in Truck Series history when you think about how many wins that number has. So there's been a lot of questions about what this announcement could be. My theory was that this was either going to be him racing against his son Braxton Busch, or was going to be announcing a throwback in regards to Kyle Busch. Well, we all know what the announcement is now. It was officially announced yesterday at 1851 or 6:51 Eastern Standard Time that Kyle Busch will be competing against his son Braxton Busch at Millburn Speedway on Wednesday, March 26th, which is, of course, today. Braxton is going to drive the number 18 car with Surf Pro as a sponsor, while Kyle Busch is going to drive the 51 with Lucas Oil as a sponsor. And there was a lot of speculation on some other stuff in regards to Kyle Busch. Obviously, we know Kyle Busch is in a contract year with Richard Childress Racing, and I think many people thought maybe he's going to go to 23-11. Maybe he's going to ask to return to Joe Gibbs Racing, despite the fact that Denny Hamlin just signed a major but a major sponsor for the remainder of the year. Many thought he'd go to other teams like RFK, Inspire Motorsports. And while I think some of those teams are certainly possible, I didn't think this was going to be a silly season announcement. Number one, Kyle Busch, despite the fact he had a bad run at Homestead-Miami Speedway, he is just not going to out of nowhere announce that he is going to be leaving. He's going to keep that a secret, and unless we start hearing some stuff, he's going to keep that kind of stuff a secret. And it sounds like from what we know, Kyle Busch seems to be a lot more happy currently at the moment being over at RCR than when he was last year, because Kyle Busch was kind of wanting out of his contract with RCR last year, and he was thinking about maybe going back to Joe Gibbs or Hendrick. Obviously, they chose Chase Briscoe for the number 19, and Bowman got to stick around in the 48, which, by the way, Alex Bowman deserves to be in the 48 car, just like Larson, Elliott, and Byron. All of them deserve to be in their respective ride. Plus, Kyle Busch isn't bringing a big sponsor, and if Kyle Busch replaced Alex Bowman, that would be a bad look because Kyle Busch is only going to be there for like a year or two anyways. But going back to this, we all think about Kyle Busch competing against his son Braxton. There's a lot of hype around Braxton currently at the moment. He's 9 years old. He will be 10 in the next couple of months, and there's a lot of talk about the long-term future. We know that Kyle Busch is not going to be around forever, but Braxton's on his way up. He's probably going to be doing some late model racing here in the next couple of years. He's probably going to be doing something like his one of the people Kyle Larson is doing, and I think there's a lot of stuff that Braxton will be doing in the next couple of years. But I think this is a really, really cool announcement for sure that Kyle Busch is going to be competing against his son Braxton for the first time on that front. He mentored him, but now they're going to get to compete against each other on the racetrack. It's going to be really exciting. I think it's going to be fun to see. It's going to be on Full Racing. Make sure to tune in, but it's not the big announcement. It's not going to be M&M's coming back to sponsor Kyle like I think we all want to see, but I think it's cool nonetheless that Kyle is going to get the opportunity to compete against his son Braxton at Millburn Speedway later this week, or later today, I should say. Going to be really exciting to see that. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Austin Hill. Now, We did cover this story on the channel, but it was announced on Monday morning that Austin Hill will be driving number 33 car for Richard Childress Racing in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2025 for 5 races this year. He will drive that car next weekend at Darlington. Then his next race is going to be at the Chicago Street Course. After that will be at Daytona International Speedway for the summer race. Then I believe he is going to run at Bristol Motor Speedway, and then his final race is going to be at Talladega Super Speedway. So for Austin Hill's schedule, he's got a mixture of really, really good tracks. One, he's going to have a driver's track like Darlington. Austin Hill's had a lot of success in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Darlington and has been very fast at that track over the last couple of years. Then he's going to race, of course, at Chicago, at a road course. I think Austin Hill is one of the more underrated road course drivers. He was supposed to drive the number 33, originally I believe in 2023, at the Chicago Street Course, but they changed it to Michigan last minute, or another track the last minute because Cup guys and people couldn't run a different series at the time. Then you've got 2 super speedways. 2 types of tracks where Austin Hill is very, very fast and very, very capable. And then he's got Bristol, another driver's track. 5 different tracks and 5 great opportunities to be competitive. Now, obviously, this is the 3rd or 4th year he's been with this team. There's been a lot of talk over the course of the last couple of years that Austin Hill could move up to the NASCAR Cup Series in the coming years. Now, one big key secret that he is going to have, he's going to have Andy Street as the crew chief. Andy Street and Austin Hill, they both have a really strong and really good working relationship from when they worked in the Xfinity Series from 2022 up to 2024. Austin Hill won like 8 or 9 races with Andy Street, and he had a lot of success with Andy Street in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So I think unlike last year, when I believe he had Keith Rodden as a crew chief, or I believe Justin Alexander as a crew chief on that car, you've got Andy Street who has a lot of previous working experience. So what are the expectations for Austin Hill in these select races? Well, realistically for Austin Hill, he's probably not going to be super, super competitive at Darlington, and probably not at Bristol, and probably not the Chicago Street Course as well. But I think about Daytona and Talladega. We know how good of a driver he is at super speedways. He's won a ton of the first race of the year at Daytona. He hasn't won at Talladega, but he's won a lot of super speedway races, and Austin Hill is a king of super speedways in the Xfinity Series currently at the moment, and you could argue he's probably maybe the best at the moment in Xfinity on super speedway tracks. I know the Cup Series is a lot more different, and he can't make the moves in Cup like he can in Xfinity, where the car is a little bit better opportunity to make moves, but still I think Austin Hill is going to be good at those tracks. The other big question is this going to be the only 5 races we see this car? I don't think so. There's been a lot of speculation that Will Brown could make a couple starts in the NASCAR Cup Series in the 33, because I know Chicago was one of the races that they were looking at for him. I know that Mexico City's been brought up as a possibility. There is a chance that could happen. And I also could see there being a potential possibility of Sonoma, like he ran last year. Sonoma's a track where he was very competitive, but they had a lot of electrical issues and a lot of electrical gremlins that really affected the event for him. Because I think he was going to do really good in that race until he fell out of the race early. I also think there's a chance that Jesse Love could make a couple starts in that car in 2025. Jesse Love, in my opinion, is one of the best young prospects we have right now, and I think it'd be foolish to not put him in a Cup car and see what he can do behind the wheel of a NASCAR Cup Series car. So I think there's a chance he's also going to get behind the wheel, maybe find a way to bring Red Bull sponsorship with Will Brown with association with the Erebus and a AAA team that he's got right now. But I think it's awesome that Austin Hill is going to make some more Cup starts, and we think about this. I think they're trying to prepare him for NASCAR Cup Series C in 2026, because I think there's a very good chance and relative possibility that he's either going to be driving a 3 car, as there's a chance Austin Dillon could retire at the end of this year, and I think there's also a chance and possibility that we could see him take over the 8 car. Kyle Busch, like I said, is in a contract year with RCR, and I think Austin Hill doesn't want to stay in the NASCAR Xfinity Series too much longer. I know he's really loyal to their Xfinity program, but I think at some point he's going to have to move up. He'll be 31 at the end of this year, and will turn 32 in 2026. I know there's starting to be a little bit of older drivers coming in and being rookies again, like he used to be back in the day when like Greg Biffle came in his mid-30s. But I think at some point he's going to run out of opportunities to go Cup. So I think they're trying to get him prepared, because I think there's a really good chance that he will be a full-time Cup guy. They probably think he'd be like Josh Berry, who just won a couple weeks ago at Las Vegas, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. So though, and I love to see Casey King get behind the wheel of this car at some point. That'd be really cool. But I'm excited to see that Austin Hill will be driving in their Cup Series car in 2025 for a few races with United Rentals as the sponsor. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about the championship race. Now, We talked about the story a little bit on the channel on Monday, as there was a little bit of flyer that was surfacing on social media over the course of the last couple days. And we've gotten some very interesting updates in regards to the potential of Homestead-Miami Speedway hosting the championship race in 2026. Now, according to what was first reported, and shout out to Breakheart for putting this out, but it was reported on Door Bumper Clear that there was supposed to be an announcement that was scheduled for Homestead-Miami Speedway to host a championship race in 2026. Apparently, drivers were supposed to fly in, and they were supposed to be announcing it on Wednesday or Thursday. I had heard this rumor as well that there was going to be potentially an announcement scheduled for that they were going to be announcing a season finale for 2026. But unfortunately, things fell through for that to happen. I'm guessing maybe the wildfires is one thing, because I know they kicked people out of the track on Thursday, I'm pretty sure, and the wildfires are really starting to pick up on Wednesday. Now, Jordan Bianchi had stated earlier this week, or basically, I believe, on the teardown that he said, and basically in the most recent article he put out about Homestead's future, that it sounds like that they feel like they're 70% confident that the race is going to be the championship event. Also, we have heard William Byron also say when he spoke to Front Stretch and other reporters this week that he is pretty confident that Homestead is going to be the season finale in 2026. But there's been some other updates in regards to the championship race in the coming years, according to Door Bumper Clear as well. Rumor is that Homestead will host a championship race in 2026, with Las Vegas Motor Speedway hosting the championship race in 2027. Now that is certainly interesting. So it sounds like, as reported, I believe it was on Holler Talk a couple weeks ago, it sounds like they're looking to do the rotating championship event starting in 2026. Going to Homestead first in 1 year, then going to Las Vegas. Now, beginning with Homestead-Miami Speedway, the one thing about Homestead is the racing is absolutely incredible. And it's really fun racing overall. But you cannot deny the track does need some big upgrades, and they do need some major repairs and updates. They've taken a lot of states out of the track, and a lot of the area is outdated. They haven't really done a lot of changes to the track over the course of the last 20 years. So you don't really need to change the racing product, but you're going to have to basically change up a lot of the stuff in the amenities, among other things, outside of the racetrack for this to really work. Homestead is going to need a lot of money, and they've got a lot of stuff that they're doing. They obviously are going to be hosting the Super Bowl in 2026, and I think there's some other college games going on. And then you got to bring this into fact as well. You're going to have the Miami Grand Prix once again in 2026. So a lot of money from Miami is going to be allocated toward those big events. They would have to start a plan with NASCAR, which they probably have to pay around $5 to $10 million, which wouldn't be too bad considering the fact that Chicago Street Course was $50 million. And if the race does go to San Diego for the Street Course race, that would probably be a little bit more, probably around $50 to $75 million that NASCAR is going to have to pay, with California being a little more expensive than going to a track like this. Overall, beginning with Homestead, I think Homestead needs to be the season finale. Look, I understand that Phoenix is a really good facility. There's no denying that. There's no question. I respect the people from that area. However, when it comes to the racing product, the racing at Homestead is miles better. It was proven this weekend. You have a more natural race, and you have more comers and goers. If you want the most natural and pure race, Homestead is going to be the track for you, and it's going to put on a really great show. So I really hope Homestead is a championship race next year. What's interesting is a Las Vegas tidbit. Going back to the rotating thing. Las Vegas being the championship race in 2027 is certainly interesting. I think this track actually would fit as a championship event. Number one, it's really close to the city. I believe Las Vegas Motor Speedway is less than an hour away. In fact, I think it's like right outside the city within like 15 to 20 miles, I'm pretty sure. It's, of course, right outside, I believe, the Nelson Air Force Base, which isn't that far away from the city. And number two, it's got that championship feel. And one thing that would be really cool if Las Vegas was to host a championship race in 2027 is they could do the burnouts on the Boulevard. They used to do the burnouts there in Las Vegas when they hosted the championship banquet and the awards banquet that happened there. Why not do the burnouts like they did on Broadway for a couple years? Bring that back, because they did do that for quite a few years on the Las Vegas Strip. That'd be really cool. But one thing we got to think about here is if Las Vegas is going to host a championship race, it may have to move up a little bit earlier with the Formula One event going on, because I still think the Las Vegas Grand Prix, yes, the contract I think only goes through this year and next year right now, but they're trying to sign an extension for the next 10 years and keep it around through 2031 or 2032 at this point. So that's one thing that might hurt this event being the championship race, but then it's still a few years down the road. I think it would make a lot of sense, though, for Vegas to host it. I think the racing generally, while not as good as Homestead, the racing's pretty good. And I think that it would absolutely fit and be perfect because the next-gen car races so much better on intermediate tracks right now than it races on tracks like Phoenix. And I think that you also have a great chance and opportunity to really provide who are the best drivers, and I think you still would have a really good championship race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. One track I like to see is Kansas, and I get the weather is one thing that people talk about, but Kansas Speedway, if they move the season up earlier to like the middle of October, the racing will be great at Kansas. It's in a championship area. The racing's amazing at the track. You don't need to repave the track. It's in the best racing condition it's been. It's right outside of a casino. It's right outside of the city. Kansas would be a really good track to use as a championship finale. We'll have to wait and see if that ends up happening. But like I said, it sounds like at the moment that Homestead-Miami Speedway will likely be the championship race in 2025 and 26, I should say, and then 2027 going to Vegas. I think Homestead's a perfect race for, but Vegas is a good track to go to, and I think it'd be a really good racing facility. We should be, like I said, getting an announcement on that really soon from what I've heard. We'll just have to wait and see when that official announcement ends up coming out in regards to Homestead's future and being in NASCAR for 2026. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Dodge once again. Now, we've talked about Dodge on the channel quite a bit over the course of the last couple months because all the way back during Daytona 500 week, it was reported by Chris Knight from CashFence.com that it sounds like that Dodge is expected to return to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026, which would be the first time they've been in the Truck Series since around 2016. And he has speculated at that time that they were going to be maybe having a Cup Series program around 2028. Well, then a couple weeks later at Atlanta Motor Speedway, the next week after that, it was reported by Jordan Bianchi that they're expecting some announcements in regards to that very soon for 2026. But it also sounds like they may be having a program in the Cup Series as early as 2027. Now, since that time, there hasn't been a lot of updates on Dodge's future in NASCAR until the last couple of days. It was reported, I believe, by Car and Track earlier this evening that it sounds like they're working on the Hemi V8 currently at the moment. In fact, just a couple hours prior to filming this video, it was confirmed that the Hemi V8 is expected to make a comeback in 2026, and it sounds like that a lot of people from the Michigan plants are coming back, and it sounds like that they're going to be coming back to the Dodge Charger for 2025. Now, why is that significant? Well, obviously, like I've mentioned, the Charger is the car that will most likely end up being used. Stellantis has been making a lot of moves behind the scenes. Stellantis and Chrysler and the Fiat Group all are part of the Dodge brand. Now, one thing that does need to be noted is that the Ram brand and Dodge are separated currently at the moment. However, with Ram and Dodge both coming in, it would be really, really huge. And you think about the separation of them coming back in the sport. It has been a long time since Dodge has been in NASCAR. The last time it was in NASCAR was, again, very long time ago in the Cup Series. 2012. That's the last time they support in the NASCAR Cup Series. And we heard a few years ago that they were trying to come back in, but things fell through. But that has all changed very, very recently in the course of the last couple of months. And things have been picking up behind the scenes very, very quickly on that front. Continuing on, you think about a Truck Series program makes a lot of sense. They're expecting to make some changes, I think, to the engine platform for the Truck Series, and I know they're expecting to make some changes to the bodies for the Truck Series for 2026, and they had to have them done, I believe, by this week, I'm pretty sure, for next year. It seems like the Dodge is very capable of that. We still have not had an official formal announcement on that at this point, but I do think that's coming pretty soon. If you want my early prediction on this, I think by the time we get to the Coke 600 weekend, which is about 2 months from now, that's when I think this is going to end up getting formally announced. Because a lot of times when you're looking at the next year for big things to get announced, the Coke 600 is usually the point where big things start kind of breaking, a lot of rumors start picking up for the silly season. So I think that's what's going to happen. Now we start speculating about the Truck Series for 2026. Who could switch over? Well, I think there's a pretty obvious one. Thor Sport Racing. For what I know, it sounds like ThorSport Racing, which we know their team has kind of switched around their teams over their manufacturers in recent years. I think that there's a chance they switch because, like I've already heard, ThorSport's in the last year of their Ford contract. And none of the drivers that are over there currently at the moment, Jake Garcia, Luke Fenhouse, Luke Baldwin, Matt Crafton, Ty Majeski, everyone over there, Ben Rhodes as well, none of them are linked to Ford right now. So they would make the most sense. Plus, like I said, they switched manufacturers. They were Chevy team for a long time. Then they switched to Toyota. Then they went to Ford. Then they went back to Toyota for a couple years. And when Haley Deegan got announced to go over there to their Truck Series program, they, of course, switched back to Ford for a few years. But they're in the last year of their 3-year contract. So they would make a lot of sense to be part of Dodge with how much they switch manufacturers. I think Nice is another one to kind of look out for as well. Nice Motorsports, they obviously are a team as second in tier, I believe, to the Chevy pipeline. And Nice Motorsports, while they're a solid team, they're not an amazing team overall. But I think that them going to Dodge would make a lot of sense for another big reason. And now let's talk about the Cup Series talks, because we know they're very likely going to have a Cup Series program within the next 2 to 3 years. If they do go to Cup in 2027, that is something that could be very, very interesting. But I think it would be 2028 more than likely that they would very much have a Cup Series program. But going back to that, who could switch over to that team in 2027? I know it's early to kind of predict that, but I think everyone looks at Trackhouse Racing. Trackhouse right now is a second-tier Chevrolet team. They're kind of like what Joe Gibbs Racing was, and we'll talk about that here in just a sec. But I think Trackhouse would be one of the teams to watch out for. None of the drivers are really, I believe, under the Chevy contract outside of Connor Zilic, who will probably be in their program in 2026. But Connor Zilic and SVG are part of the Red Bull group over there too, so they could definitely switch maybe to Ford, but I don't see Trackhouse switching to Ford. But we'll go back to Joe Gibbs Racing now, because Joe Gibbs Racing for many years, they were a Chevy team and were part of GM for a long time from the beginning of 1993. When they switched to Toyota, everybody was shocked. Look what's happened to Joe Gibbs Racing. They went from a second-tier team that had some success, but not great success, to being one of the best teams in the last 20 years. If Trackhouse switches to Dodge, they're going to go up there on the same level as Penske, Joe Gibbs, and Hendrick Motorsports. And they're going to be able to emerge as one of the top teams. So I think they're the one to look for. I know that Honda's been brought up as a possibility too, but I think Dodge is the one to really, really look at. Another team could be Legacy, but I look more at Honda being the most likely. But Legacy, because of Richard Petty's association still with the team, though he's no longer an owner, he's an ambassador for the team. So maybe they switch there from Toyota to Dodge, which would be interesting if Petty and their team switch, because they switch manufacturers, seems like every other year, it seems like at this point, though they do have an alliance with Toyota for the next couple of years. But I think that there's a chance they could switch if they come in or Honda comes in. RFK people brought up, I don't think RFK is going to switch. I think they're going to stay with Ford. Yes, I know Brad's had major association, and I know there's still a chance that could happen, but I don't think that's going to happen, at least for the near future, of Jack Roush still being part of the program in a pretty big way, though he's kind of taking more of a backseat and let Brad Keselowski take more of a hands-on role. Same as Steve Newmark and the Fenway group over there as well. And I think about some other teams like Kaulig. Kaulig's the other one to think about, because Kaulig Racing, they're at a crossroads. They've shown some more speed to start 2025, but they're still behind the 8 ball currently at the moment. And if they were to switch and maybe form an alliance with Trackhouse, I think they'd be in really good shape. Be the second team. They go from being like the 5th or 6th team at Chevy and jump up to the second team. I think those are the most likely organizations that are going to switch. You're not going to see Hendrick switch. You're not going to see Joe Gibbs switch. You're not going to see other teams like Penske switch. They're going to stay with the respective manufacturers. So I think these are the teams that will switch if Dodge goes to Cup. But what's so exciting about this is the fact that it sounds like we're getting closer and closer to an announcement. Like I've already mentioned, I think it's very likely that Dodge will get officially announced and confirmed to be in NASCAR in the next couple months. And with them announcing a Hemi program coming in for 2026, I think it's going to happen. I really think it's going to happen. And I think it's going to be a big deal for the sport when it does get officially confirmed that they are coming back. I'm so excited hearing that the Hemi V8 is coming back to the Charger platform, and it looks like it will be coming in, and it's pretty much a done deal at this point. Now we just got to wait to see when the official announcement is going to get confirmed for Dodge coming back to NASCAR. So, that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me to Facebook and Instagram, and support my page as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your thoughts about Dodge likely coming back to NASCAR next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Homestead likely hosting a championship race next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, you're going to be seeing race picks for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Martinsville Speedway. And then, of course, on Thursday, we're going to have the Cup picks for Martinsville, and then we'll have the paint scheme video as well. And then on Friday, we are going to have the NASCAR news video and the truck review. Then on Saturday, we should have the Xfinity review dropping, and we'll probably have reactions to Cup qualifying as well. Then Sunday, depending on what happens with the weather, we should have the Cup review, the starting lineup video, and we should have an SVG video dropping. So I think he's actually going to have a pretty good run at Martinsville this weekend. And then, of course, on Monday, we should have a NASCAR news video as we preview Darlington. We are going to have probably a look at all the throwback schemes, probably most likely on Thursday of this week, so expect that, or next week, I should say, as more of those get officially announced and confirmed. We should be getting some of the track schemes from SVG, Ross Chastain very soon, same with Daniel Suarez, and all the other Joe Gibbs ones, and the Hendrick ones for Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and William Byron, all those people. Same with Kyle Busch, too. We should be getting some of those very, very soon. So anyways, like I said, same with Sam Ayers, Sheldon Creed, Connor Zillage. All the Junior Motorsports ones pretty much have been revealed, but we'll see what other ones do get announced. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody, and same with Kurt Busch, too.